Call to order this special meeting of the Easton Board of Education at 7:33 p.m. February 24, 2022. Members in attendance: Jenny Cheetah, Ginger Jesus, Randy Hicks, Devin Whitehall, and John Jensen. I believe Jeff Parker is going to be with us in about 20 minutes or so. That's another event he was coming from, obligation he was coming from. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone looking to make public comment, please state your name, street, and town. Sorry, if you can, please make sure to be brief. Please make sure to be civil, and please make sure not to target any individual members of our staff inside of the schools. Thank you very much.
Okay. My name is Debbie Bearer. I live on Hay Street here in Easton. Thank you for giving me time to offer comments, and thank you for giving your time to help secure a better future for Easton. So it's been quite a process in budget season, and I have deep appreciation and respect for all you've done. I know we're wrapping up, but I wanted to say a few words about supporting students' social and emotional health. I know I've spoken about that before. Because now, according to an article on foxnews.com, published on January 4th of this year, the U.S. Surgeon General, the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the Children's Hospital Association have declared a national emergency for crisis in child and adolescent mental health in the U.S. The article quotes Dr. Sarah Bowe, a member of the AAP Council on School Health, who stated that even when schools get back to in-person learning, where we are now, it's not so easy for kids to adjust. And I would agree. Kids are aware of mask mandate battles. They feel their parents' frustration, but don't know what normal means anymore. They need help understanding. We need to provide professionals who are trained in helping children navigate confusing times and helping parents support their children. It's like having a school nurse. Of course, we wouldn't go without. Kids who are physically ill can't do their best. Neither can kids who are struggling emotionally. They can't learn, make connections, or gain the confidence needed to let their imagination soar. That's why I'm wholeheartedly in favor of spending money to support students' social and emotional health. This way, we can create a healthy school climate and give students every chance to grow.
Thank you very much for your comments. Seeing no additional public comment, we'll move to board member comment. Anyone? Jenny? Sure. Sorry, Jason. It's hard to hear you. The fan is loud.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember, Sarah, can you witness the every night at the private meeting? Right. So I just wanted to thank you for tolerating some of the discourse and being with us until that late hour. Tri-board meetings are probably some of the more complicated and trying hours to sit through. And please don't let those experiences weigh in on any thoughts of maybe seeking positions elsewhere ever, because I really think that are people that could help us move forward and through those conflicts. I think there's tremendous potential for Dr. McKinnon, especially for the leadership, helping us sort through and be a productive group down the line. So before I got too far from that page, I just wanted to
Thank you, Jenny. Any additional board member comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to the main topic for tonight, discussing the 2022-2023 budget.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you. I think I'm going to tee it up, and John and I we've got a couple of slides to talk about this evening. Thank you, Debbie, for your comments, and for our administrators for joining us here this evening. If we go to the next slide, this is the Easton Board of Education Superintendent proposed budget. So this is the spreadsheet that you actually have a copy of. And if you recall, we had our last budget conversation, we modeled a series of budget reductions, and we started at 4.3%. We presented in January at around 4.5%. So we made some minor adjustments, but we started talking about what various budget reduction models look like from 4.3% down. So this is the Google sheet that you have access to, which is the sheet that we're all using. You can go to the next slide, John. Tonight, that's difficult to see, but what that slide is a sandbox for us to do various modeling tonight and to start to explore the relationship between health insurance and what our budget increase is for next year, plus if we start looking at additional staff members. At the last budget workshop, if you recall, we provided you with budget reduction models, which included the grade 2 teacher based on enrollment. And one of the questions that the board asked us to look at was what would happen if we added an additional section in first grade from 5 sections to 6 sections. And so tonight, Mrs. Fox Santora is going to provide a presentation on class size and sections along with Michael. And when we get to a certain point, we'll be able to play around with this sandbox that we've created for you. And if you say to us, adjust health insurance to this level, add in a first grade teacher, take out the first grade teacher, we'll be able to provide you with real-time data on percent increase, and the dollar increase, and where that's going. So we'll get back to that in a moment.
So just to ground us all in what I think are going to be 3 of the most important concepts, and to make sure that the public is sort of fully understanding what these sort of concepts are that you bring up so often. So we're talking about the health benefits budget. That is the budget to support health insurance, to support medical, dental. There's certain amount of fees that we pay for administration of those services. And then certainly we have in our contracts the paying out of health savings accounts as a percentage of HSA accounts. So all of that goes together to make up the health benefits budget. We can look back 2 years, 2020, 2021, it was 2.6 million. Last year, 2.5 million. We may be talking tonight about a 0% increase of that, which would keep it at 2.5 million. We may, as Dr. McKinnon mentioned a moment ago, we may decide, hey, what if we take that to 1%? What if we take that below 0%? And sort of talking about what that means will be a big part of the conversation tonight. I think it's important that we're all really firmly grasping, like, what is the health benefits budget? Next is the health reserve balance. Now, it has been talked about in, I think, confusing ways. I did not fully grasp exactly how this was executed in the actual accounts until very recently. And so I wanted to make sure that we're all fully grasping, that the public understands. The health reserve balance is not a separate and distinct account. It is simply a balance that it is recommended that we keep inside of the health benefits account. So the health benefits budget is the amount we say, here's how much we're going to spend in a year. Throughout the year, we fund the health benefits account. And what our goal is in terms of the health reserve balance is to keep that at about 3 to 4 months worth of spending. And we have to do that because we're a self-insured district. Okay. When we look at 2020, 2021, we were at 718,000. When we looked at 2021, 2022, we were at 912,000. This is sort of where we finished or where we started the year. That's the balance that was in the account as the reserve. When we think about 2022, 2023, maybe this is one of the numbers that we'll be playing around with in the sandbox that Dr. McKinnon talked about. 600,000 is maybe the right number, maybe 700,000 the right number. And I think that's a part of the debate that we'll have tonight is what's the right amount of money to keep in reserve there. The recommendation from Brown and Brown, the experts in this space is 3 to 4 months, and I think we'll entertain that. The last concept is the unexpended funds. And when we're talking about unexpended funds, it's simply the amount of money that we budgeted for that we didn't use and we can give back to the town. Now, before we give it back to the town, it may be that we say we have, let's just say 500,000 or 600 or 700,000, and we say there's really a desperate need to do some work in the parking lot at Samuel Staples Elementary School. And we would say, we think it makes sense to take a chunk of those funds that were not used as a part of the sort of regular planning that we did and work that we did as part of the budget and say, we think it makes sense to spend that and give back the remaining balance to the town, but use some of that for important work that we do there. So have I said anything that confuses anyone? I'm sure I didn't articulate it perfectly. And have I said anything that sort of conflicts with the way that people were thinking about how this worked? No? Okay, great. All right. Are you going to go to the
I'm
stage?
actually going to go to stage. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
You can go to the next slide.
all right,
Yeah.
go for it.
All right. So I would do this on my computer with a mouse, but John's right. Okay. So if we look up here, this is our health benefits account. Okay. We started the year with $912,250. Everyone can see that. At some point, you've heard discussion about $343,567. Right? Dr. McMorrin and the former business director, Scott Rice, decided to move $343,000 before I started, and before Mr. Petrozelli started, into the health benefits account. Okay? So that amount was moved at the beginning of the year. The current balance as of January 31 of the health benefits account is $746,406. And John is correct that the health benefits account is like a checking account. There are actually deposits and withdrawals that we pay for medical claims out of the health benefits account. And we also deposit money into the health benefits account from the board when they make contributions, plus when staff members contribute money, right? So that's the health benefits account. The key number though is the current balance of $746,000, right? Moving over here, this is what yes.
Did the 912,000 include the 343?
This was the balance at the beginning of the year. This was an additional contribution that was added. This is the current balance now. So what that actually reflects.
So the balance at the beginning of the year is actually $1,200,000.
Yes, that is correct.
That's right.
That is correct. And it's not right at the beginning. There was a kind of a lag between July and September. But yes, if you add those two numbers up, it'll be around 1.2.
So at this point,
It's down.
in and out,
It's down
spent
here,
it down to.
which demonstrates that this count, the count doesn't have 1.2 million. It has
Which means we pulled from the balance that's there, but we may have also made contributions from the amount that we budgeted, the 2.5 million that we budgeted. You can see we withdrew 417,000.
Right.
Right?
That's right. So just going over here. So we budgeted $2,517,000, and John talked about what we budgeted about for the last 3 years. Okay. This amount is encumbered right at the beginning of the year. There's a purchase order against it. We've drawn down $417,537. We currently have $2,100,459 left. Okay. This is kind of a dashboard to help explain the numbers. I'm going to connect the dots for you in a moment. All right. Now, these are monthly claims. Between the beginning of the year and up until this point, monthly claims have been very favorable, quite low at $129,548. January claims is now $230,924. The claims between
Is that
now,
cumulative or is that just January?
Just January.
this is just January.
Okay,
This is from the beginning of the year to January,
okay.
right? So it's about $129,000 per month, okay? This is the January claim. The way our human resources manager, Fran, explained it, is that the claims between January and July generally go up because people meet their deductibles, they start getting more procedures and so on. There are also a few employees that we know about that are going to have higher than average claims, which will affect our claims. So again, the January health claims are the claims were $233,924. One of the things we talk about, one of the things we have to think about is what do you think our expected monthly claim average is going to be for the next 5 months? Okay. Let's say that if January was $233,000 a month, that for the next 5 months, it's going to be about $250,000 a month. So if there are 5 months left, it's 5 months times 250,000, right? So John, you hit the slide. All right, hit it again. Hit it again. Okay. So these are the key points, right? There's a relationship between how much money we have in the employee benefits account, how much money we currently have left in our lines 270, 271, what we budgeted for, and if you add these together, you get 2.8 million. So we have a lot of money expected at the end of the year, right? We hit it one more time. Okay. These are the possible claims, right? The 250,000 times 5, the possible claims 1.2 million. The math, if we look again, we look at these factors, that's 2,846,865, right? Yes.
Really quick question. You're calling it health benefits account balance, is that what we typically refer to as the reserve?
Yeah,
I just want to make sure it's the same.
Yes.
yeah, we've been conflating those two. We've been inaccurate about the way there is no special reserve account. The amount of money we want to keep in the health account, that's the health benefits account is where we keep the reserve.
It's just a name.
That's
I
right.
just wanted to make sure.
That's right.
we're talking about the same.
All right, so I'm going to come back down here.
Did we look at last year's first 6 months to see if it's comparable to the 1.250?
We could. We have claims data for last year's claim average was $181,982. That was for the entire 12 months. The previous 3 years were also approximately 182,000. But I think Brown talked about the last 2 or 3 years as outliers because of COVID. And so this January number is probably a more accurate reflection of where claims could be for the next 5 months. So just remember the delta between the 2.8 million and the possible claims of 1.2. And John, if you go to the next slide. There we go. Okay. So the forecasted unspent is really the health benefits account plus what we have in our budget, which is almost 1.6 million. The recommended health benefits reserve balance. Now you can kind of decide what you want to be in that health benefit account, right? But it's approximately $600,000, $200,000 a month. I don't know whether you want to call it 20% or you want to call it 25%. But you want to discuss how much money you want to have in reserve. So if you've got 1.6 million and you take away 600,000 because you want to make sure that you've got at least $600,000 in the health benefits account, the unexpended health benefits account is around $1 million. Okay. If you've got $1 million left over at the end of the year with unexpended health benefit monies, what are your options? You could use health benefits. You could reduce the health benefits in our operating budget, which is one of the models we're going to talk about today. You could increase the amount in the health benefits account, right? So is it 600,000? Is it 700,000? If you remember, we started the year this year with 912,000. It's possible that you could use it for other things as well, capital projects, and of course, returning money to the account. So that is really the big picture concerning health benefits. Hopefully that was helpful for you.
We weren't allowed to reallocate it to capital.
Well, that's actually a really good question.
Well, so I can talk a little bit about the sort of reallocating any money that goes into the health account, the health benefits account, is tracked only to be used for that. That's why we don't do that. That's why we didn't send the full on the previous account. We never sent this 2.5 million into that account because then it's tracked there and can't be used for anything else. Instead, we're funding it as we go. And Vicky has already, we started with the 912 and then the 343 was added. We have been drawing that down to that 746 level, as well as taking withdrawals from the amount budgeted, so that it comes down to a reasonable level instead of us being stuck with a balance trapped inside of that account. So while we couldn't take that 746 out, if we manage it appropriately, we could end up with 600, 700, whatever we think the appropriate amount is in that account as a reserve balance. And then the other money, we actually can do certain projects with. Now, there is, I think, a strong track record of us returning significant balances to the town. And I think the Board of Finance has developed a certain amount of trust that we're going to do that. And we're not just going to go buy, $1 million worth of, manila folders or something like that to spend that money unnecessarily. Like we have not done that in the past, and I really hope we're not going to do that in the future. So, I think there's a lot of questions about how we might, if we ended up with $1 million, could we say we'd like to spend a certain amount of that on the parking lot at SSDS? Maybe. I think we'd want to have some conversations to, certainly we want to have conversations among this board. And, there's a lot to do in that, in that vein. You want to talk about the sort of other options?
Well, sure. I mean, we can model when Kim talks about kindergarten, first grade, and second grade teachers. We can't use these monies next year to fund teachers, but you might be able to use some of that money this year to offset how much money you're budgeting. So instead of budgeting 2.5 million next year, which would be a flat budget, if you budgeted 2,400,000, and then you added additional funds to the employee benefits account, then there might be ways in which, so there's a relationship between the two. We've set up a model later for you to play with different options. So the next slide is really just class size, and I'm actually I have to share Kim's presentation.
I think they shared it with me before.
Okay, great. And just kind of this is where we ended up. We talked about having 5 sections in each of our grades, with the recommendation that had a 6th section to grade 2, which would bring our class sizes to 16, 17. And then we talked a little bit about kindergarten and first grade. We thought the kindergarten number was a little bit aggressive, too high. And so that's why we kept class sizes at 5. Kim's going to provide some further data about where the current enrollment is right now for kindergarten, which is now high 80s, and then also the first grade.
So when I last spoke with you, I can't remember if it was
the Board of Ed meeting on the 8th and the workshop on the 10th, I shared with you that the number that Dr. Carter had projected didn't seem like a solid one to me. At the time, we had 71 known incoming kindergarten students. And I suspect that a lot of people saw our Board of Ed meeting on recording. If you could advance, we now have 85. So I actually do believe that Dr. Crowder's projection of 98 is in fact a real likelihood. Currently have 5 sections. If we distribute 98 among the 5 sections, we have 2 classes of 19 and 3 classes of 20. Add a 6th section, we have 16s and 17s. When we last met, I was asked to take a look at the complexity of IEPs. So I met with Jen Del Conte, the preschool staff, speech and language, OTPT, and another special education teacher to take a look at the IEPs. In our pre-K, those include some kids were actually in our 4-year program and others were called itinerant students. They come to Samuel Staples just for speech and language services and therefore have a speech and language impairment, or they have a diagnosis or excuse me, a classification called developmentally delayed because they have other issues. In some cases, but not in all, the complexity of an IEP for a student who is developmentally delayed is a little bit more complicated. So we have 9 that we know about who are entering our kindergarten, and of those 9, 5 are considered pretty complex. So I am recommending that we have a conversation about an additional section of kindergarten. And when last we met, I actually think we should talk about, or shared with you that I do think we should talk about adding an additional grade 1 section. Again, with the same request about looking at the complexity of IEPs. We have 13 kindergartners with IEPs, and among those, 5 of them are deemed to be pretty complex. We haven't any 504s in our current kindergarten programs. But as I mentioned in previous meetings, we do have quite a number of kids that are receiving intervention through SRBI, which is our general education requirement. The winter data that is the most current that I can share with you, I shared this with you actually a couple weeks ago. Those are the kids who are receiving tier 2 in reading, math, and in social emotional learning. And kids who are tier 3, which are the ones that are the most concerning to us, they have the most intensive, the most frequent interventions being delivered. We have 6 tier 3 in reading. And one of them is a student who has an SEL concern and is receiving a lot of support through our social worker and our school psychologist. Dr. Prada projected 92 in next year's first grade. I do suspect that that enrollment is going to be higher for this reason. You folks will see this annually when I do the budget. We track very closely the number of kids who enroll in the Samuel Staples after the budget is completed, as well as those that are withdrawn. Look at the right-hand column in this chart that I'm passing out. You can see the number of kids over the course of the year from first grade forward. And I track for you the pluses and the minuses, the kids that added or enrolled and the kids withdrawn. I've highlighted in yellow when the net was greater than what we thought when we passed the budget in May. So of all the grade levels, 1st through 5th, it's pretty consistent that in 1st grade, we always get more than what Dr. Crowder projects. Given that amount of history, I think it's pretty likely that 92 is going to be a low number. But I broke it out for you to take a look at it. We continue with the 5 sections of 1st grade that we now have. Will be 3 classes of 18, 2 classes of 19. And if we add a section and make it 6, it has 4 sections of 15, 2 sections of 16. But I really do not think it's going to be 92. I do think it's going to be higher, and I do think those class sizes will be larger. So I am asking that we have a conversation about adding an additional first grade. Currently, in the budget, as you guys already know, I've already put in a grade 2, so I didn't add a slide for adding the grade 2. If you could advance. So naturally, there's expenses associated when you're adding the teacher. So I broke it up into 2 columns. I took the exact salary that's currently in the budget for adding the grade 2 teacher. They will likely need a mentor, so that's the mentor fee. Kindergarten is the only one that requires the part-time paraprofessional. As well, the first 5 days of school, we have the kindergarten paraprofessionals stay full day, so it's an extra $150. And then all the materials, the math materials, they all would need math manipulatives. We have nothing left in storage. I looked in the math program, particularly at the primary level, is very concrete. Kids need lots of manipulatives in order to make sense of numbers. Instructional supply software, and of course, textbooks related to reading for an additional $2,431. But it doesn't stop there. So if we add these sections, we then need to schedule art, music, PE, Spanish, and so forth. So there are expenses related to FTEs needed in those disciplines so that we can schedule those classes. So I'm actually going to ask Michael to speak because he does all the scheduling for art, music, PE, and for and I think he would be more helpful.
So I did want to start because it's a lot of new board members as well as administration with a short historical perspective on specials and the FTEs. So, and I'm not going to go through every year since 2014, just a selection. So using 2014-15 as a baseline, there were 31 classroom sections that year. And all of the specials were 40-minute class sections, except for art in that year, which was a 60-minute. We had 1.8 music, and those teachers taught general music. There was also grade 4 and 5 chorus, as well as grade 5 band. Library media was taught K3 and was one full time. We had 2.5 FTE and 2 full-time art teachers. I want to say, I don't remember exactly, but that might have been the first year when we added Spanish as well. Yeah, and it was just K2 that first year, so we had 1 full-time teacher, and those classes met 5 days a week, 15 minutes per session. At that time, we were also a hot school, part of the hot school program run by the state, higher order thinking school. So any extra space in a specialist schedule was used by integrating the arts with the content curriculum. We would have collaborations between the different specialists, fine and practical arts and PE, with the classroom teachers to look at ways to teach the content through that discipline. So fast forward 3 years later, we started to see declining enrollment. We were down to 29 sections at that time. Same amount of minutes for the specials. And I did put in red anytime we saw a reduction in FTEs, and in green anytime we saw an addition. So that year we were able to reduce because of declining enrollment to 2 full-time PE teachers and moved art to 1.6. Spanish, we increased that year because we increased the grade range to K5, and you can see the frequency and duration for that. And we were still a higher order thinking school at that time. So again, any extra time in the specialist schedule was filled with those collaborations. And
Right.
yeah,
The 3 to 5, you say grades 3 to 5, we increased, I think the increase was just 1 grade a year until we got to 5. I think.
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, all right. 17, 18, we started 14, 15.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, so I didn't give everything. That's all we're on. Yeah, there we are. So fast forward 2 more years, decreased 1 more section. We maintained all of the FTEs, except for Spanish. And we went back down to 1.0. Spanish is a shortage area. It's hard to find part-time Spanish language teachers, particularly at the elementary level. We were not able to, and so rather than maintaining, we decreased the FTEs and made adjustments in the frequency and duration, as you can see. This was also the year that the state discontinued the higher order thinking school program. So that was no longer a factor in scheduling. So that brings us to the current year. So this year we're back. We've started to see increasing enrollment. We're talking about this tonight. This year we're up to 30 classroom sections, 5 per grade level. We have reduced down to ART 1.0 because ART now is only a 40-minute class rather than 60. We've also reduced the music down to 1.2 over the last couple of years. For various reasons, we no longer have grade 4 or 5 chorus. To replace that in terms of specials, grade 4 and 5, all attend lessons in library media, so that the library media schedule is completely with scheduled classes. And you can see the Spanish as well. We've maintained that same schedule. So this is a visual of what the schedule looks like. It's a puzzle. Having 30 sections works actually very cleanly. 5 classes per grade level. Some of the benefits, every class in a grade level has their specials at the very exact same time, which gives them 5 days a week of common prep time, which is a benefit. You'll notice that each special teacher teaches 6 sections per day, and historically that's kind of been the cap, 6 sections per day, which does allow for contractual lunch and prep period plus some time for conflict. So here are some proposals for how to accommodate any increase in classroom sections. So this first one is looking at 31 classroom. Again, the grade 2 increase in sections is already in the budget, bringing us to 31. And so I mentioned that there's each special teacher historically has taught 6 sections a day. Moving above that, we could either, if we go above the 30 sections, then we have to look at increasing FTEs or some other type of way to accomplish this. It's very difficult to find part-time FTEs, particularly if it's only for 1 day a week, really to teach the 1 section. So a possible way to achieve this, if you go to the next slide, would be to add 1 section per special or specialist per week to accommodate that 6th second grade section. And you can see at the very bottom line, we're able to do that. And the way we're able to do that is by adjusting some of the minutes during the last 2 years to allow both travel time for the teacher specialists who are teaching in the classroom, as well as for the possibility of cleaning, additional cleaning during COVID. We had increased transition times between the classes. Looking at reducing that time, we're able to capture enough time for another 40 minutes, as well as adjusting a couple of things here.
Reducing the in-between time or reducing the instructional in-between time?
From 10 minutes to 5 minutes,
Right.
which it was pre-COVID.
Right.
So that would seem to work, to add one section per week to each of the specialists.
Can I just ask the question, just for the realistic delivery of that instruction? Is it really feasible for, I'm looking at this schedule and 6 periods in a row, 40 minutes just by itself seems tremendous. Not having it really broken up by anything else. That's a lot of energy in for that stretch of time. So even adding that 7, I know it only happens, it's not an everyday thing.
Yeah.
But do you really think that's tenable for a teacher to do 7 classes a day and, still be able to deliver instruction at the level they would want to by that 7th period?
Don't know. We've never done it in my experience. I mean, it is broken up, and if we needed to look at other ways to perhaps break up their day to kids, that might be a possibility too. It's obviously moving draft. But yeah, and I do think that there would be an interest in the teachers union to look at bargaining the impact of this. So it's tenable in terms of instruction. Again, we haven't done this before, but it is just the one day a week for specialists.
That's basically an extra 40 minutes per week.
Basically,
They still have a 40-minute lunch.
a 30-minute lunch and a 40-minute prep period plus some common planning period. So I don't know the answer to your question, Jen. It might be a concern for some. But with adding the one section, it does seem feasible. Which gets to the next proposal, which is if we're looking at adding a section in K-2, you're talking about 33 classroom sections. So there are a couple of ways, proposals that we can go about achieving this. One would be to be looking at an increase in FTEs, and as you saw historically, the highest previous number of sections I had shared was 31. We're looking at 33 here, and when it was 31, we did have more FTEs. So one way that we looked at accomplishing this, and again, this is just a draft, it doesn't have to necessarily be each of these subject areas, but we looked at if we increase art to 2.0 again, by doing that, we would be able to increase art from 40 minutes back to 60 minutes per class. And we would remove the grade 5 from library media classes, and they would have 2 art periods per week. The library media becomes the tricky one because it's hard to increase the number of library media specialists. They're all sharing that library media space, as well as trying, again, to find a part-time library media specialist. And library media would stay 1.0 and teach K-4. We would increase music slightly. And when I say, when you look at these increases in FTE with music and PE, this is the minimum that you would need in order to cover all of those additional sections. It still might be hard to find a 0.4 person versus some other slightly higher part-time. So that could be an issue as well. But we could increase music to 1.4, which would also allow us to recapture some time for our orphan ensemble and ukulele ensemble, which have been very popular and successful in the past. And we could increase PE to 2.4, which would also leave some additional time in that schedule for possible adaptive physical education, which are part of IEPs. Spanish is tricky. As we were talking about, we reduced it a few years ago and changed the frequency and the duration because it was so hard to find part-time Spanish teachers. I imagine that might continue to be a difficulty. We could look at increasing the FTEs to accomplish these additional sections, or we could look at changing again the frequency and the duration of, or the grade levels that would receive instruction. We'd have to play around with that. this is kind of what that looks like with the point 4 over to the right in PE. And then another possibility, if you answer one more time, would be to maintain the FTEs exactly as they are currently. But instead of just 6 periods per day, we would increase the specialist course loads to 7 classes a day, 3 days per week. Advance to the next slide, John, you're showing visual of that. So again, that bottom row in each of their would include 3 additional sections per week, one in grade in kindergarten, one in grade 1, one in grade 2. But without an increase in actual employees. So those are some possible solutions to the scheduling.
Puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite a puzzle.
It's always a puzzle, but adding those additional sections, yeah, just adds a few more pieces. So, you know, one of the things that happens adding FTEs when you go over the 5 sections is you do lose, and there's no way to avoid this, but you do lose that common prep period. We'll try to maintain it as frequently as we can over the course of the week, but you're not going to have 5 days.
Go back to the second scenario, the 33 section, can you add this? Is it, I just want to make sure I have the total add, it's 1 new art teacher, 1 FTE. So going from 1 to 2.
Can you, there.
No, go
No,
back.
actually, one more. This one goes?
Yeah. So right now, how many do we have in art?
Right now, we have 1.0.
Here's
So
1.0, so we go from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Music, we're going from 1 to 1.4.
1.2 to 1.4,
Okay, CE.
2 to 2.4,
Okay, great.
and then Spanish. It's on.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one question. Randy?
I think the next slide. So art, the middle of the page.
Mhm.
Walk me through that day.
So the art is, and perhaps you're referring to it's only 4 classes per day.
I'm not 100% sure, but
Okay.
sure.
So again, going from 1.0 to 2.0 art features, we would be able to increase the duration of each class from 40 minutes to 60 minutes. So that's why you can see fewer classes taught per day. Also, we would be able to have 5th grade would be able to have twice each week. Rather than one.
So in the middle page, it says art 1.0. You have a bracket there at the top that says common planning.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the time frame is there, but then you've got 2 classes and then you have lunch and then you have prep, 2 classes and then prep. Yeah.
No,
Is that accurate or is that?
I'm not sure, only because I can't see it well enough. It looks like it might be a mistake, but I'm gonna have to double check that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the times, if you're talking about 2 60-minute blocks, that would be adjusted.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
And
double
just-
check that.
Just doing the math, in this way, the teachers are actually having more contact minutes with kids this way.
For art specifically.
For art specifically, than if it's science.
Yes, it
classes,
is.
40 minutes a day.
Exactly.
We have years, high school where I used to teach where, just depending on sort of the ebb and flow of kids and enrollment, there were teachers that would voluntarily, voluntarily accept an additional section, obviously with their salary adjusted accordingly, but knowing that it was either sort of a growing pains year or they had an interest in earning, the additional income that works with our contract. possibility, but I just know if that might be a conversation to have with certain individuals, depending on their circumstances. If this is sort of a transition year, and we're thinking of this as more of a kind of a long range planning adjustment, as we know enrollment's increasing. If that's even a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if we expect that enrollment is going to continue to increase, we're not going to stop perhaps at 33 sections. At some point, the long-term solution is adding up to these. You know, it really depends on how much the budget can withstand to do that, and also can we find those part-time FTEs. The greater the FTE, the more attractive the position is. So that is the long-term solution. It might not be the solution for 1 year, and contractually, at least my reading, and I did consult with Increa about this, contractually, the additional sections can work, but again, I do think it would be something that the union would likely want to look at open board.
Do we have a cost estimate for that?
Well, if we've got that built into the model, so when we get to the sandbox, I can show you what the various models.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Just in thinking about adding teachers in sections, right? We always think about smaller class sizes, right? More attention to kids, obviously, you know, benefits seem to be obvious, but just in your experience with onboarding new staff in order to fill these new positions, does that benefit of the smaller class size, and how does that balance against sort of the new teacher in the new role, you know, new to San Luis Staples, versus your current teachers with a few more kids? Does that make sense? I'm really asking the question clearly. Do you think it's better to keep your existing staff with additional students because of their experience and working together? Like, how does that balance out against a new person coming in? And even though they have fewer students, you still got someone who's relatively new.
Well, I truly believe there are many gifted teachers at San Luis Staples. When you look at the complexity of some of these IEPs and you look at the clear academic needs to general education intervention, even the most gifted teacher is going to struggle to provide as much support as those kids need. Some of it, you know, is not just academic needs. In many ways, dealing with very young children who have some SEL concerns, sometimes the behaviors are very unpredictable. It requires a different amount of techniques, and it requires, in some cases, a team approach to help support the student. And based on the examination that I've done on the kids that are the most complex, it's going to be difficult for the most experienced teacher. That's a long answer to what I think you really want to know. Is it's going to be better to have small class size? I really do. And I think the onboarding that we do at the school is superb because we have a math specialist, a reading specialist, 2 extraordinary clinicians, and because we have teachers who are really good at collaborating. They'll be supported by the person who's the most expert in those content areas, but so too, they'll be supported by the teams because they're so strong. We've had a real, in all the grades, some real stability in all the grades, that we don't have teachers leaving. It's not stable.
Yeah, if I remember correctly from the projections for the next, like, not just next year, for the next few years, this is a need for a long-term need, basically to have the 6 sections in K1, 2, based on the projections for multiple years from now. So we're not just filling a gap this year.
Yeah.
Right.
You're correct.
The Prada numbers say that by 2030, we'll have 1,135 kids. And that is only 30 off of our high water mark, which we have. So,
They're coming.
Thank you very much.
So now we can go to the next slide. Thank you for that. This is our sandbox. You can see here that we can play around with health insurance at various percentages. You can see that we have it. What the change is if we have health insurance budgeted at 4%, which is a reduction of 31,000, which brings down our percent increase to 4.12. If we reduce medical insurance to 3%, then the reduction goes down to 3.98. If we reduce medical insurance to 2%, then the reduction goes down 82,000, which brings the budget down to 3.82. And I'll go all the way down to 0. If we reduce our budget health insurance down to 0, which is a reduction of $132,000 from where we proposed, that the percent is 3.55. However, that does not include the first grade teacher, the kindergarten teacher, the kindergarten para that goes along with the kindergarten teacher, or the support staff of 0.2 using 0.2 PE or 0.2 art if we add one teacher. If we add both the kindergarten teacher and the first grade teacher, then we're also then it's 0.4 using 0.4 PE. However, we can play around with this number right now and tell us exactly what you want to try, where you want to take health insurance, what teacher you want to put in and try. We can tell you the exact budget percent in real time.
Only make it everything like all the way up.
Yes,
So
we
it's
can.
4, 3, 2.
If you want the kindergarten teacher, the first grade teacher, the support staff, everything that they ask for,
Yeah, do
you
it
just
all
have to
in.
tell us where do you want health insurance.
I would all in. I mean, I would put health insurance at 1%.
Okay.
1 or 2%. I just want to see what it looks like.
Okay.
Can we start by just working with the health insurance to see what kind of gaps it leaves? And then look at
We can do
adding
whatever you want.
things back in.
Whatever-
I'd like to understand from other folks, like, I just want to see that these percentage changes along with that original slide that you have, and it's not just possible to put those both up there at the same time, but just understand, okay, so if we bring it down to 0%, then also being able to like, at the same time, take a look at the impact of those original numbers that we were considering, is that?
What do you, Jenny, what do you mean by original numbers?
Like the first slide that you showed us with the arrows and the circles, it was all beautifully laid out with the health insurance numbers. Right, so if you come down to 0%, how does that picture change? Like, how do we go into next year?
That doesn't change, that won't change that slide. If you go back to that slide.
First slide,
It's right here.
there's a current year.
Going down to 0 is this guy right here, right? 3.55.
That's right.
No,
So how much do you have though in that health? We call it the health reserve.
we're
and how
talking
much
about
we-
2 different years.
Yeah.
The first slide
Yeah.
is this year, this slide is next year. We're
Right.
comparing apples and oranges.
Correct.
Let's
So
see.
Jenny,
No, not necessarily because.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Brandon.
You are, because the first slide talked about this year's healthcare spend and where the reserve ends up and how much money can go back to the town. Close the books June 30th. That's when this starts. This starts July 1. It has no bearing on the first slide. It really doesn't. We were talking about it last meeting that we could take money from this year and lower next year's healthcare below zero and offset the 4.3% or the 3.5% by essentially underfunding next year's healthcare spend. It's tomato, whether you give the money back to the town this year or you offset next year's healthcare spend. It's really just when you call the money from the town. If we go by what John was saying early on, and we give $500,000, $1 million back to the town today, this is going to blow your mind. They've already collected all of their taxes. So when we give them money back this year, in theory, they just say, okay, then for next year, we're not going to bill the town as much because we have this extra money from the year before. So whether we do it or they do it, it sort of comes out the wash. We have more control if we do it, but in the end, they want the money back this year if we don't spend it. But going back to your original question, this has no bearing on the first slide. It really does.
The only, yeah, I thought I see what you're saying, the first slide, like if you take money and you do what Randy, you're saying, it feels like it has bearing, even though it doesn't really change these numbers. But it allows you to potentially go under 0%.
The number that John's going to go in front of the Board of Finance with is essentially this. We're going to talk about this year. They're going to want to know, well, what are you going to underspend this year if you are? But I don't think they're going to change next year's budget based on,
Right, I agree with you.
you know,
Okay,
what
I
we
see
may
what
give
you're
to them July 1st. Because we just don't know what
We
we're going
don't.
to give to July 1st. It's an estimate.
Historically, in experience going through these budget cycles, that you're saying apples and oranges, but they are both. Because then we look at that, we look at where we're gonna end up at the end of the year, and it's, all right, well, maybe we don't need to put this money in the budget for this capital expense, we can use this money at the end of the year, and that gives us some wiggle room in that percentage, and maybe we can slide in one of these teachers into that slot.
We don't have any, I don't think we have any capital expenses.
Yeah, we didn't.
I hear you, but that ship is already sort of.
Or we don't need to fund the reserve as much, so we're gonna do this. I mean, prior years' conversations have toggled back and forth between both. I felt like quite a bit. So that's why I was asking the question. And if there is, we've had discussions before, like you're saying the town's expecting all of that money back, but we have definitely hedged and held on to some ourselves within we've had discussions of reasonability where we do something that we think is important and also give back what we think is a responsible amount to the town. So if there's a conversation to have about going below zero, what's needed for next year, I just want to put all of those possibilities out there, because if it means that we can secure another instructor for next year for these little kids and their needs, then I think it's an important.
I'm not saying it's not important. All I'm suggesting is that I think when John gets in front of them and says, hey, we didn't spend $500,000 this year on healthcare, so therefore we're going to reduce next year's healthcare by some number. I'm not sure that works, even though we talked about that the other day. And it's a question, it's not a statement. It's just a question. I don't disagree. The money is fungible. You can apply something to next year, offset by this year's lower expenditures. I don't know that it makes sense to do that with healthcare or personnel, because those are personnel. Healthcare is vague. Personnel is person.
But if it doesn't make sense to do what with this now?
Because it's an actual, it's not gonna, it's an actual ongoing increase, so offsetting it with.
It's. I don't think.
Real
I don't know that we could
Right.
take an underspend this year at healthcare, which is what we're having, and say we're going to take that and apply it to 3 teachers next year. That's all. And that's sort of what we're.
Well, I mean, it's kind of semantic. You're not really applying it technically to the teachers. You're just reducing the amount going towards health insurance, which then gives you,
But in the budget year, the next budget year, so next 22, 23, 24, if you don't have that same amount to apply from health insurance to those employees, which we hopefully would not, then it looks like a more significant increase because you don't have that overage to cover those fixed costs.
Jason, you said you could give us some stuff here.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for us to see
Yeah.
it modeled.
Yeah, I
You
can
should
follow
do
lots of different examples.
So I think Jen had asked for the all in. I think that's where we were.
Yeah, let's drop the, all right, all in with
Yes.
the 18 to.
You want to drop in the staff and what percent do you want to help?
So I think Jen had asked for 0% and all this stuff, or, sorry, Jen, did you ask for 1% or 0?
I'm just saying, I'm not sure what the easiest way is, but like if we funded the teachers and the things, the
Yeah.
priorities that we looked at last
Yeah.
time, that, what is that, what percentage does that look like?
It all depends on where you have insurance coverage.
I would say that 1 or 2%.
I would say health
Why don't-
insurance.
why don't we-
Why not?
right, why don't we just-
Zero. That is my
Yeah.
scenario.
We
all
will,
right, so, hold on, can I have another question?
yes,
Like, what's the reason, I hear people throwing out 0, 1%, 2%, if those things are not related, then why are we saying 1%?
So we're saying there's, so
They are related.
our health insurance would cost from this year. We would keep it this, right now it's baked in at 4% increase from this year to next year in the budget. What we're saying is we should take it down to 0% because we have so much left over.
No,
that this-
I understand, that's not what I
But
understand.
that's what we're saying here is the 0% will be taking the health insurance to a flat number from this year to
But
next
you
year.
said you want to look at it at 1 or 2%, and I don't understand why. You want to
Well,
look at it at 2 versus 0.
Because if we're gonna give all of that money back to the town, I'm just a little nervous about claims being higher next year because it's hopefully a non-COVID year and I think people will start going back to the doctor. So I think it's a little risky if we're looking at claims that have been at 130 to like going January to 230 to now thinking people are, if we're gonna be at 250 for the next, if we're at 250 every month next year, we're just much higher than we have been. That's all. I'm just a little nervous about people
Only
going back to the
only
doctor.
higher than we've been for
That's
a
what I
couple of years. Like,
Right.
Prior to that, claims were
We
elevated
are,
beyond
we,
that,
but we are,
and we carried a much lower reserve, sometimes not.
we're in a position with
Thank you.
the reserve that we have to weather next year.
Right.
And then,
So,
and then after COVID.
okay,
I've got a number here.
can I ask one more question?
yes.
So we have, if we add 3 full-time teachers, 1.6
We've
specialists.
already factored in one teacher already.
Okay, so
a grade 2
2,
teacher.
2 plus 1.6.
Yeah.
Did we factor in additional health insurance for those folks?
No, that's about 50,000. So we have to keep that in mind.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, go ahead. Now you can finish.
Okay, so now we're at 4.65, and that is,
Well, wait, I don't know if that is necessarily.
So we are right here, we are looking at, so if you look down, if you scroll down, you'll see in blue, that's our healthcare number, the 2157, so that's a 0%, right?
Yeah,
That's what's on it?
Yeah.
Great, okay, so now come back up again, click on that, right on where it says the 45,722. Let me change to that. Sure.
You can change it.
I mean, the matter, you can see the little picture there. So when you click on that,
Yep.
you should be able to see that this is pulling the grade 1 teacher,
Yes,
the grade K teacher, and the kindergarten para.
yes.
And then this is pulling a 0.2 music, a 0.2 PE, and a 0.2 art.
Yes.
What would we like it to pull?
Should pull a 1.0 art,
You'd like it to pull, okay.
a 0.4 music.
So we actually have to change that. That's,
Yep.
we only added 0.2. So
Okay.
we have to change that.
So we're gonna add in a art, and then we're gonna add in a 0.4 music.
Well, it actually was supposed to be a 0.4 PE.
Yeah.
I think they cost the same.
All right, so
22,000, 12,481, 24,562.
So right now, included in this number.
Yeah.
Is the 0% healthcare, the grade 1 teacher, the 0.2 PE, or we could call it music,
Yes,
the 1.0 art,
yes.
and then you also like the 0.4, and that 0.4 is in there.
There's a 0.2 and a 0.4 music.
There's a 0.2 and a 0.4, it's just in yellow.
Okay.
So we added in all three teachers, well, one teacher was already in, we added in 2 additional FTE teachers, 1 para, 1 FTE art, 0.4 music for release PE at a 0.2.
And so we're now seeing the all in, and that's 4.63.
Yeah, I just thought.
Please, yeah.
I'd like to offer two other suggestions.
Before we dive in on that, their sidebar here to make sure that they're, so let's give them a minute. And while they're doing that, I'm gonna just.
Weren't there some other costs in with the a mentor, things like that? Are we capturing all that?
Yeah, we
That
need
is
to
implied.
double back on that.
Okay, or it's like 24.
So we have to make a correction.
We're
Yes,
gonna,
go ahead.
we are going to make a slight correction, so that. All right, so.
John, is that with or without touching that?
That's
Well,
zero.
You want
That's
the
at
breakdown?
0% increase
Okay.
year over year.
Yeah, okay.
John, I don't know what practice happened.
I know.
Yourselves.
I know. I'm just trying to get as much on the screen as possible. Go ahead.
Okay. All right.
We did.
I can end it.
John?
It's all right, it's okay, I think you ended it. It's all right.
All right, so see the orange there, sir? So we change this to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rates on.
No, that's okay.
That's the way.
No, one. With one teacher, it's 1, 2, 1, 2,
That's why.
Oh, okay, so 2. They're going to add grade one teacher in.
Because I know what my kids. Is that-
You got to.
All it
No,
is is like
it's-
literally thought.
I know, they just, they were.
Perfectly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's actually consistent. So. Yep. This. And these. Yeah. I wanted to add one. It's that. Oh, yeah. One of them. This. Well, that's per one. Yep. Which one you're gonna use? Yeah. That gets kind of tricky to actually adapt. Figure out either this group or that group.
Well,
You can put up
what I would,
you can put any number you want. You know, or-
we'll see what I would. Put in there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes up a bit.
Well, you know, so what's that? Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you do it that way. It's not. Yeah, before, yeah, second, second, for 2 million.
But this is if we have the two, this is if we kept up the 33 sections.
Yeah. Yeah. It does climb the pump though, for, you know, what's coming. And I think the question is it 3? You know, 3 It's definitely not 0, right? Because it's, you know, you need that extra spot. So the question is, next year, is it one more or we are good with the stakes? Like if we had 3, we'd be fine for next year. Right. Not having to ask them to get a second. And then next year, if we have that second. Maybe. Actually, what, next year, we'll know it's.
So, no,
Depends on the-
Because you've got,
Yep.
have the number of kids.
Right. That's right. So if you have three now, you're gonna have a fourth one.
That's right.
If you have two now, then you have your third one. Assuming that kindergarten.
Because your current second grade is as small as.
Right.
As small as.
Right.
And the other thing is we have it. It's also something that's so.
What are the needs of the kid?
My concern is. Just have such. They're just, like, and we're just gonna keep it putting back for special class. We don't keep kids out of.
Well, that's why the small class.
Right.
Always good.
Especially because young grades, we're gonna be, it'll save us some time. You don't see it, right? It's like it's different money that you save, but it's fair.
Rubber hits the road with that teacher.
I mean, complexity is just, and right now, it's gonna be the next 2 years, or maybe even. Yeah, but like in terms of budgeting, it is, if we under resource first grade, I mean, that's what I think is the first grade. If they don't learn to read by the first grade, you're in trouble. And you're basically an intervention or something like that. Like, in our system, like,
Well, that's all.
well, of course, you can have that.
Yes.
So.
All Kim's fault.
Yes. I was feeling the need to go back.
No, we get.
Plus the others, plus the amount that you have to spend.
Oh, yeah, I'm just, yeah.
Right. Yeah, the 732 is kind of a. It's kind of a random number. It's like the 732 costs the amount that we have to spend. Yeah. Right. If we have 600,000, which I think is. So if you take that to 750. Well, if still, if you're doing it, July is the beginning of the actual.
When he said that in January, they start meeting their productive class, that's what she had.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. How many months the last 5 years have we?
All right, everybody, we're ready. Okay, so So just to clarify, is everyone ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
Order.
Okay. So you asked to see what would it cost if we added everything, but we kept health insurance at 0. So we added the first grade teacher, the kindergarten teacher, and the para, and then the support staff at 0.4 for music, 0.4 for PE, and 1.0 for art. And that brings us to a 5.0% increase.
And not the, is that the 881?
Yes. Row 14.
Now, if we scroll down, you can see this other cell here in the purple. And right now you can see proposed health insurance at 4%, 3%, 2%. Right now we've got it entered in at 0% increase. If you tell me a number, we can take health insurance and put it whatever you like. Right? If you tell me to take out 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000.
Yeah.
Right?
How far below are we tracking for this year?
313,000 below.
Depends on what you project for the next week.
If we project for, let's say we projected that the most conservative of 250 for the rest of the year, for the next 5 months. How far below are we tracking if we did 250 for the rest of the year?
Well, you budgeted $250,000 for the next 5 months. That's $1,250,000 in claims.
The answer is 250.
What's that?
250.
The answer is 250. If your budget's 2.5 million today, if we spent 250 the next 5 months, you'd spend 2,250,000. So the difference is what?
Okay. It seems like a reasonable number to try in there.
Yeah, 1,900,000. Where we are today. I just added 1,250,000 to the 672, 911.
We spent more than that. Yeah.
Well, no.
Yep, that's all right. I'm sorry?
I'm just.
Sarah's definitely. I'm sorry for a kid, hold a second, but Sarah's definitely having a motion.
Okay. Okay, so Jeff, did you had a number you wanted to try there?
400.
400.
You mean minus 400?
Minus 400.
So we're going to put in 2,117,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. 2,117,000.
This is really cool, by the way.
Okay, scroll back up. Now it's down to 2.74.
And we have a winner.
Did that include though? I just want to make sure.
Get the big stuffed animal here.
I like this one, but I just want to make sure it includes,
Does not include health.
so we need to make sure we have health insurance for the additional staff. And there's a couple other expenses. I mean, they were minimal.
Yeah.
But it was like an extra $10,000 of math things. And so could we, like, I know it's probably in the budget is large, but I just feel like,
I don't know what let's talk about health insurance.
yeah.
I don't know whether you budgeted you for what you budgeted for, whether it's a family or whether it's a single. But I would have, it's probably, Scott, maybe you can help us with this. Would it be around $12,000 to $15,000 per person if we had a body?
I actually don't know because we're self-funded. So, I really have to start thinking. I know if we weren't, I'd go with 23%. I don't know. 64, but I mean, for one individual.
What's our staff count?
Yeah, that's the right way to calculate, because that's what I was just trying to think through.
I mean, it's,
Jason, you have, Dr. McKinney, you have our staff count? Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be somewhere between 12,500.
I'm thinking around 15.
Okay, so 15,
About 15.
15, all in benefits.
If it's a single, yeah.
Yeah, around 15.
Yeah, we used to, I mean, many years ago, when we used to have that separate number, we usually used 16.
16?
16.
Yes, so if you, okay, 15,000 per body.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not-
Is it rough estimate?
Per body.
So that's 30,000.
Well, you got the para.
Para.
So it's 45.
The para is the para half-time for part-time?
Oh,
0.4, 0.5? I would imagine they probably are not. They
no,
may
that
not be
would
better.
tell. It wouldn't be
I think the amount that's like
Unless they've got
11,000.
46.
If we've got the amount, 11,200. I assume that's salary. I don't think it's benefits.
Not benefits.
No, that's salary.
It's all in.
That's about-
All in para was the number that you provided. Is that correct?
Well, just, it's a kindergarten para, full-time or part-time? You said
It
part-time.
is part-time. I don't believe they can.
No, I don't think,
That's why the
11,000 salary.
everything, 4 and 67.
I can add in a benefits estimate of 30,000.
Yes.
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 Okay, so I just made another column that says benefits estimate, I put 30,000 in there. And now I'm just gonna add that right to this.
Kim, what was the math, like manipulative? That was like, what was the other stuff, like the
All
24,
that-
24?
On that slide, I think one piece.
We say,
Assuming that we're not gonna have- We're gonna have dollars.
Right. Yeah.
It's not academics.
Additional expenses. Here it is. Oh, 24.
24 and 24, so 5,000. Team mentor, 2,500. Yep,
Jeff, what were you saying? Because the short, some other way.
so 7,000 to
No,
8,000.
I was just talking about the 24, 31, 24, 31. We're gonna have overage, extra
We can buy this year.
dollars in
Right.
that area. So we're adding $5,000, we don't need to add $5,000 on it from 18 million.
Well, but I think that's, then I would make sure they're not. They understand, we don't think they're able to do that.
With 7, 8.
The benefits, yes, but I don't think, I don't, Sarah, I think Jeff is saying he doesn't think you need.
You don't need 5,000, but again, it's
For materials for those teachers?
around.
Yeah, it's $8,000.
it's easy to see that in.
Additional expenses. I
That
think
would
it's-
be, classroom collections, books and.
Right.
And, the materials that you want for your,
Right.
for your extra teachers to have in their room.
Plus the mentor.
I
Yes,
did not,
we know.
And a team mentor.
No, I understand, what- yeah, you're saying we could spend it, we could buy the math manipulatives if we had extra reserves this year. for next year.
yeah, I'm not saying that class doesn't need manipulative to say maybe it's not necessary to alter the percentage because.
I think it's a relatively small percentage, but it's good to at least track it here. And then if we decide, we didn't have as much in unexpended funds as we thought, and we have to figure out how to make things work, then it's good to have a placeholder for it, I think.
So with this cut, the 400,000 change, how much would we have if our estimates are correct, the 250? How much does that mean we would carry into our health reserve, our health balance account next year?
I think this is a slide. that might be helpful.
That changed.
Okay.
So
Right, that's right.
this is what I think you need to talk about now. The health benefits account plus the unexpended budget was approximately 1.6 million. The recommended health benefits reserve is around 600,000, depending if you wanted to, and $200,000 per month. Unexpended health benefits was $1 million.
In addition to that. So that's in the forecast.
So now you reduced the budgeted amount next year from 2.5 million down to 2.1 million. Do you want to make any decision, or, what is the relationship now between unexpended health benefits of $1 million and that health reserve balance of 600,000? Remember, you started the year at 912,000, and then you added, well, you didn't add it, but it was added 343,000. And go back to the previous slide.
So the health
See the relationship between what's incumbent in the account, what you started the year in, what your monthly claims are. So,
The reserve needs, if you're under budgeting next year by 400, the reserve needs to be enough.
that's
That's
right.
right.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. So, yeah, under budget next year, then you need to raise the reserve.
Right.
You said.
Instead of 600, which is what all the, sort of, that's returning a million. You take that to higher than 600 in order to make sure that you have enough if you're underspending on the healthcare budget. Correct. And then you end up still returning a healthy chunk to the town. Yeah. Okay.
In theory, the town will close this circle by saying either you return $1 million and I grant you the 5% budget next year, or you return
That's exactly it.
something less and I grant you a
That's
3%
right.
budget.
That's exactly it. That's right. So,
The only thing I would add to this is that part of the equation, I think, in educating the town, but illustrating for the town why we need these folks,
Right.
head count,
Yep.
all the things that you shared with us. I think from a historical perspective, they always like to see the historical, right? What was the class count 5 years ago? You can make an argument that Jenny explained this to me. It may not be the same today from what we were dealing with 5 years ago or 7 years ago. I mean,
Right.
My 16-year-old who went through Staples had a class of 120 every single year, right?
Right.
And they had 6 sections, and the most part came out okay. So,
I was trying to explain to Randy that 20 kids in a class, 20 kids in a class this year, next year is not the same as 20 kids in a class 2.
Yeah. Especially,
I think yes.
especially trying to recover from the last couple of years.
but we did add some pairs in general at Staples for.
With the grant money, we certainly did.
Right. That expires at a certain point, right? Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point. Is there anything we need to account for in thinking ahead, like, Kevin, we're talking about teachers and how that's going to be, that becomes a permanent. The expenditures, is there anything in terms of grant funding that's going to trail off?
Not that I'm aware of. I
Cause
think,
any alterations?
I think a lot of work was done. I think Dr. Pearson involved did a lot of work to understand what the cliff looks like in terms of resources and what we're going to need. And I think what we've been talking about tonight and what I hope we will pass in terms of the resources that we're looking at here, I think does a lot to ensure that we're not facing any kind of resource cliff. But I don't know if Dr. Pearson has anything to go on to that.
I mean, the same as Staples benefited from the support of 3 interns this year, so the interns helped to in classrooms when we go stuff, but the interns also provide additional student support that can push into the classroom. And that's wonderful. That will end this year. Okay, next year. Next year, there will still be through the our reserve grant, 1.5 paras and there's some additional support stuff. There's some additional professional development being provided next year through grant funding, and then I anticipate while our reserve program schools and all.
I make a motion. Make a motion to
Yes.
adopt a budget for the 22-23 school year of $18,049,538.43, which is an increase of $488,395. Percent increase is 2.78%.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I don't know who won that. It looked like a tie with
Just
the
with
runner.
Jen and then it goes
I
to
think we
either one of
have to
us.
give it to Jenny as the senior. Oh, okay, Jen gets the second. Discussion.
Is that is the right number, right? Is it? I don't think that's the right number.
This is what we did.
This is our healthcare number.
Yep.
Here's our-
Well, well, I'm not really sure. 'Cause I think so. 4.3% increase.
Maybe it is. Scott, can you just do a check? Just do a quick check, 2.78% based on this year's 17,561,143. Check that. Should have to do that.
It's kind of a little- now, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, we're.
You should.
You get 2.70, 2.705. Just multiple. I'm okay with that.
It is right.
2.78, 18,049,500.
I mean, if I just truncate it at multiplying it times 1.0278, it comes out to $49,343.22. Well, that's because of the truncation of the decimal places.
Okay,
So
so
I
this,
carried that decimal.
if this guy had 5 decimal places, then Yep.
So did the 538, or is that the 2%?
I think that's the right. Yeah, no, the dollars and cents is not an issue. It's the decimal places on the percentage.
Oh, I see.
Randy, can you also verify?
I'm looking, yeah, I'm
Motion's
gonna take a
accurate.
look at it. Yeah.
Oh, now we're having fun.
He is 395.
No, I think 3 decimal places.
Yeah, 2.78.
Good.
Very good.
Randy, it's Randy verified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be. Good.
All right. Any additional discussion? Any additional discussion? We'll call the question then. We'll start over there because it's easy to work there. Jenny?
Yes.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes.
Thank you. Randy?
Yep.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yep.
Thank you. Devin?
Yep.
I vote yes. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. I think that takes us to our next agenda item, which is board member comment.
You're here, actually.
Thank
Here, here. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much for the great
Thank you
work.
for all the automation you brought in this
Yes.
year.
And
It
for
really,
this, and the slides, and the circles, and the arrows, and red numbers, and
what a value add.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. I think then we will. Yes, please.
It's the same question.
I don't know if this is the right time, if it's not just an email. The cancellation of our next meeting, we've gotten lots of notices, but
Yep.
not an explanation and
So
information about rescheduling, or did I miss?
yeah, I sent an email out about the calendar and like all of the different things. So the reason that we canceled our regular meeting is because the Board of Finance schedule for actually doing these presentations now next to them was a mess. It was really hard to find a spot that worked for them and for us. us. And the only date that actually worked was the night of the 8th. I think it was right, March 8th. Yes, so I could have done it without Dr. McKinnon, which I think is a really bad idea.
Yeah.
So I said, let's not do that. So, yes, yeah. No, you're not in the chamber. But I appreciate the thought. So that's why we had to cancel that. My intent is that we schedule a special meeting and I'll gauge sort of availability. I know we're gonna want to hear about what's going on in March in terms of building reports, and I'm sure we'll have other things we want to talk about. It was just a calendar thing.
So the Board of Finance meeting will be on that Tuesday.
It will be on that Tuesday, and that will not be a concurrent meeting. That's just me giving a presentation. I highly encourage everybody from the board to show up because it's good
Where
to
does
show our
that take
support.
place?
It usually is at Samuel Staples in the cafeteria. I think it's gonna be at the cafeteria, but we'll see. It's possible that they're gonna have to see, I do believe it's gonna be a hybrid meeting. I think they're gonna make it so that people can zoom in as well. So you'll have more information about that on the Easton government website. We'll give you the information as well.
Did you send us, is it 7:30? Do we know that?
I do have that information. I don't have it at the top of my mind though. I think that
I'm just thinking in terms
Formal
of.
7, if we're the first person. on.
we're the only people on that.
Okay.
So, yeah,
I just want to be able to tell Sarah.
yeah, I think 7 o'clock.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. It was.
Good. If there's no additional board member comment, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Jen. Any second there? Good. Absent objection, we are adjourned at 9:19 p.m. Thanks, everybody.
Early, it's early, wait a minute.